Hey, it's Luke from Out of Darts. This is our build guide for the Yolo. The Yolo is a magazine adapter for the Dart Zone Solo, which is one of our favorite blasters here at the warehouse. Ton of fun, but it's only a single shot. So the Yolo comes in and gives us mag-fed compatibility. This is a manual slide top blaster, so you pop in the magazine, you load a dart, prime, and fire, and you get really great performance out of this. It's worth noting that the way this retains the actual magazine is using these feed lips here, so you are only able to use actual worker Talon mags. Unfortunately, our Coda and Tachi mags won't work with this mod because of the small area in here required to retain it. This comes as a kit. You're going to get 3 different 3D printed parts, which include the Magwell itself, which is the main body, the actual ram, which will be inserted into that main body, and then the top slide. We'll be reusing some parts from the original Dart Zone Solo, and you of course will need the Solo Blaster sold separately on our shop or elsewhere. Additionally, I would recommend some super glue for holding the magnets in. We like this Instacure real thick stuff here. It's nice to work with. A little bit of silicone lubricant, though this is really optional. It's not necessary. And then a number 1 screwdriver and a 2.5 as well as a 1.5 mil driver. So 1.5, 2.5. You can use a regular Allen key, but for the sake of speed, I'm gonna use my driver here. Included with our 3D parts are the 6 pieces of hardware you need up here, including O-rings, a grub screw, 2 magnets, and some hex head screws in 8 and 12 millimeter length. First, we're gonna go ahead and remove the 5 screws on the side here. You don't need to be too careful about where they go because they are all the same size. Next, we're going to carefully remove the shell. I would recommend just setting this aside and keeping those screws in place. Now we're going to go ahead and take off the muzzle, which we're going to basically completely replace. I like to hold down on these other parts and kind of keep them all in place as I work that out. If anything falls out, no problem. I'll show you at the end how to put it back together. But for now, we can kind of just leave that all together, and we'll set this aside until we're done with the rest of the assembly. Next, we're going to need to get the barrel out of here, so we're going to go ahead and remove these 4 screws. Once you've got the screws open, this will come right out, and you can simply pop the ends off. To remove this part, it's a pretty tight fit. You're just going to kind of work it back and forth. You could grab it with pliers as well to pull it out, and then you can set all of this aside. We will not need the rest of that for this build because we're replacing it with the Yolo. Now we'll take our hardware and our 3D printed parts, and we'll do the basic assembly. We'll start by taking the 011 O-ring and just stretching that to fit. It'll be pretty stretchy, just like that. And we'll take a little bit of our silicone lubricant, and I'll just work like a drop or 2. You really don't need much here. And then what you do want to do is test that that fits in here. It shouldn't be too snug. If you're finding it's too snug, then you're going to want to take an X-Acto knife underneath here and just carve away underneath the O-ring slightly until you get a good fit. If you have a big problem here, do let us know. Just shoot us an email and we'll help you out. Next, we're going to take the ram and slide it into the back. And then we're going to take our shorter of our 2 M3 screws, the M3x8, and we're going to put that in here. And then we'll drive that in place. It doesn't need to be extremely tight, but you do want it to go in nice and straight. And you can stop when you feel some resistance. Next, we're going to install our magnets, and for this you are going to want some cyanacrylate glue, or also known as super glue. There are 2 sides, and these help hold the slide together. It's just a little locking mechanism, and the magnets need to match up with each other. So the easiest way to do this is to basically let your 2 magnets connect, because then you know the polarity is the way you want it. Take this part first, and you're just going to take a tiny bit of super glue, kind of little dab inside there. You can kind of spread it all around. And you may need a hammer or a hard surface depending on the tolerance here, but you're basically going to press that in place so that's nice and flush. And then you're going to do the same on the other end. Not too much because you don't want it to get all over the place. And the easiest way here then is to slide this piece down and push it together. And you can put this on a work surface and just give it a gentle tap with a hammer with a cloth over the top, and that'll get you all set up. It is worth noting you shouldn't leave these together while they're drying. In case of any glue leakage, you really want to make sure that they are separated like so. And I'd give those just a little bit of time before letting them set up before you do the next step. I had a little excess glue here, so I just took a paper towel and wiped that clear and allow that to dry. If you find you're having problems getting the magnets in, there can be slight variances in print tolerances. Just take an X-Acto knife and widen the hole slightly, and enough force should push it in place just fine. Now we're going to install our barrel. Now there's no direction on this, both ends are the same. So first, what I like to do is make sure that it fits loosely through here. This is your part that's actually going to slide. If you find this is too tight, take an X-Acto knife and just ream that open slightly. But in the most recent versions of this, we should have the tolerances really tight. That should be nice and loose. And then at that point, you're going to take this side and you're going to slide this on. Now this side you actually want to be tight. This hole needs to hold this tightly and is also going to get a screw through the top. So this one might take a little bit more persuading. It's going to be a little bit harder and it should be snug. And basically you're gonna wanna push both the barrel and that all the way down. Then you can take this M3x12 screw and you're gonna screw that in as straight as possible until it makes contact with the barrel. This one's gonna be pretty snug because it has a lot of threads holding on there. That's intentional. That'll make sure it doesn't go anywhere on you later because it is keeping that barrel retained. At this point, your slide should work and it should stick in the back because of those magnets. Very satisfying. Finally, we're gonna take this tiny grub screw and we're gonna drive that down through the top. This is just reinforcement for the catch that stops the whole slide from coming off. And that just needs to go flush like that, so you shouldn't see it from the top. Now we are going to do the final assembly where we put it back together. Now there's a little bit of an order of operations here, but I'll kind of show you as clearly as I can how everything should be arranged, because these parts do like to pop out, or maybe you took yours apart for another reason. Hopefully you could see all that. Now, first to note, there's a little hook right here. That hook needs to come into this hole that you can see right here. So those need to kind of happen simultaneously as you put it together, which does sort of require some opening up of all of this. So the idea is that we're going to get that part and this part in at the same time as inserting that little tab. It can be a little tricky and a little tricky to show on camera. This is probably the hardest part of the whole install, but it's really not too bad. So I'm kind of sandwiching this part open a little bit to get that into its little slot, and then getting the rest of it all down and in snug together. If this falls off, no worries, it just goes straight back in with the indicator up. And at this point, you can actually close this whole thing up and let it catch. Double check that this spring is back in its place. And we just close that all up together and screw in our 5 screws. These are again all the same size, so if you lose them, know that you can just choose whichever slot. And there we have it. That is the Dart Zone Yolo modification. Pretty easy to reverse if you ever want to go back to the original, but I'm pretty sure after you've gotten used to firing a magazine through your blaster, you are going to love doing this. I'll do a quick demo of just basic operation. Now, obviously there's no skinny breech here, so you cannot pull the magazine out when the barrel is in the rear position. To load the magazine, you simply slide the slide forward, pop that in. As you put this in, you'll see it loads the dart into the Magwell. And at that point, we can prime before or after. It actually doesn't matter because you can't vacuum load this. You will find it slightly easier to prime prior to closing the breech, but it doesn't really matter. Both work. So I usually prime, load, fire. And generally when I'm playing, I would prime and I would do it here. It's a really nice little elegant move. I think Luchathor did an awesome job with this. I think people are gonna have a ton of fun, and I'd love to hear your comments. If you have any problems with your build or any issues with your parts or other questions, shoot us an email, orders@outofdarts. We're always here to help. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Out of Darts.